Hi everyone, this is John. Welcome back to another episode of the Subcontinent. Through our episodes, we aim to raise important issues which are not generally covered by the mainstream media regarding the region of the former subcontinent. We will try to explain the issues, break down controversies surrounding them, and give you an insight into what the experts and common people think.
In this edition of the Subcontinent, we will look into the lives of the ethnic Nepali minority of Bhutan to see what they have been through. And we shall also see how the coronavirus has affected the lives of millions of workers in Bangladesh.
You might be surprised to know that Bhutan is the world's biggest creator of refugees per capita. This means that proportion-wise, there is no other country in the world where more people have been forced to move away or resettle from. The Lhotshampa people are ethnic Nepalis living in Bhutan, most of whom lost their right to be Bhutanese citizens. These people have faced significant persecution at the hands of the Bhutanese establishment and still face arbitrary arrests, illegal detentions, torture, and even death in custody.
To this day, the massive exile of Lhotshampa in the 1990s, an ethnic group with Nepalese descent, continues to be unsolved. Bhutan is frequently branded as the homeland of happy people, where all things in the country are stacked up against the gross national happiness index. With the well-admired constitutional monarchy still ruling the country, Bhutan is portrayed as a storybook land of continuous happiness. But this happy country harbors skeletons in the closet which have been spilling out. With a population of under 550,000 in 1990, Bhutan produced the most refugees in proportion to its population in the world. 100,000 Lhotshampa, nearly a sixth of its population at the time, were forced out of Bhutan, charged by the government of being undocumented immigrants. This expulsion has its roots in the Citizenship Act of 1958 and 1985. About 2 centuries ago, many Lhotshampa migrated to Bhutan for work as there was a need for foreign workers. They stayed on in the south ever since. What led to their expulsion was the 1985 Citizenship Act, which tightened restrictions on Bhutanese citizenship by naturalization and loyalty to the monarchy. Conflict rose in 1990 between the Bhutanese state and monarchy, where the Lhotshampa demanded civil and cultural rights and protested for democracy. All Lhotshampa protesters were then branded as anti-nationalists and expelled.
During the protests in the 1990s, after the Lhotshampa people were being expelled in high numbers, Bhutan made thousands of arrests, even of those who were mere participants. Some reports claim that under questioning, prisoners had allegedly been beaten by law enforcement personnel using canes, sticks, batons, chains, and even rifle butts. Not just that, but homes in entire villages where the Lhotshampa people lived were raided. Families were tortured, and women were even raped by the Bhutanese military. These are direct testimonies of the Bhutan refugees living in the camps in Nepal.
Currently, there are 2 camps remaining from the 7 camps. Camp conditions are hard as this was never meant to be a permanent solution. The United Nations Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, has recently announced that it will no longer support the Bhutanese refugees living in eastern Nepal as of 2020. As the resettlement program ended about 4 years ago, there are 7,000 Bhutanese refugees that remain in the country, and they have become restless as their future becomes more ambiguous. Initially, they fled to India only to be deported to Nepal by the truckload. Unlike now, the governments of Nepal and Bhutan were unstable. A change of officials was frequent, causing many setbacks in negotiations between the 2 countries. There are discussions of absorbing the Bhutanese refugees into Nepal. It is a sensitive subject which raises concerns for the 80,000 ethnic Nepalese living in Bhutan, now considered illegal aliens. Currently, there are Tibetan and Rohingya refugees living in Nepal. Concerns are that if Bhutanese refugees are naturalized, other refugees will want to be absorbed with citizenship as well. Another solution is to resume repatriation negotiations with Bhutan, as both countries are now active on the world stage. Maybe by ending the UNHCR's support, a sense of urgency will be created to determine the fate of these refugees.
Now, to learn more about this issue, we are joined by Mr. Tilak Nirula. He's a former Bhutanese refugee who is now settled in New Hampshire, USA. Mr. Nirula, welcome to the show. So, starting off with the question, why has Bhutan refused to take back the refugees?
You know what? This is a very good question. The government of Bhutan has repeatedly failed to follow the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The right to return to one's homeland with regard to refugees is principally protected in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the International Covenant on the Civil and Political Rights. The intent behind this right is to facilitate the return and re-entering of the people to their country of origin. However, Bhutan does not appear to acknowledge this universal declaration and has been, often denied the return of his own citizen. Adding further insult to injury, in July 2010, the Prime Minister Jimmy Waithile referred to the refugees as illegal immigrants. And another Prime Minister Tshering Togbe termed the refugees as non-nationals and illegal immigrants. According to them, the refugee camps has been, filled by the Maoist militant intent to overthrowing the Bhutanese regime. And the international communities that maintain diplomatic ties with Bhutan failed to put judicious pressure on the government of Bhutan, to uphold and to protect the fundamental rights of the remaining refugees who wish to return. So, even the international communities fail, the Bhutan government refused this process. This refugees in limbo for 2 decades has been unsolved. Even the resettlement process came, Bhutan doesn't agree to return its remaining 8,000 population from the camp.
Definitely a concern. Now, let's just take a look at how the global media has covered this situation, and then we can come back to the question and answer session.
It is disgraceful for Bhutan to preach to the world about gross national happiness while 1/6 of its population has been forcibly evicted from their ancestral homes. While the refugees in eastern Nepal await repatriation, we hope the UNHCR will not shirk from its responsibility and that other stakeholders will increase pressure on the Bhutanese government for the dignified return of the Bhutan nationals. With the financial assistance of the UNHCR, semi-concrete houses are being built. Arrangements have been made for schooling outside the camps. The salary for 20 teachers will be paid by the UNHCR. Arrangements for the medical treatment of the refugees have also been made.
Thank you, Mr. Tilak, for staying with us, and thank you, viewers, for doing the same. Now, how much does the economy of Bhutan and Nepal weigh on this issue?
Many refugees have businesses, small or big, ranging from small stalls at the weekly market to shops or other stores in their main trading center. Despite the common assumption that the refugees represent a problem or burden, it is clear that refugee, migrations bring both cost and benefits to the host countries. They both provide cheap labor, expand consumer markets, and justify increased foreign trade. So, for both countries, in overall, their present, the refugee present represent and reflect an integral role in improving their national economy. And again, the refugee population has played a very, very vital role in elevating the economy of the country. If you see in Nepal, the same thing. Refugees has stores, shops, small businesses, and they're doing incredible work. For Bhutan, the country is lacking that resources, that manpower, that skills. And I think, with that being said, Bhutan has significantly, failed to grab that resources and infrastructure that the refugee population has.
All right, Mr. Tilak Narula, thank you so much for being with us on our show and sharing your valuable views.
Thanks for having me.
Now, let's see how people on social media see this situation, and we can then continue on with the show after this. Please stay with us.
Elena Pradhan ironically suggests to weight Bhutan's happiness by the misery they brought to these refugees. Kanak Mani Dixit believes that a real happy and democratic Bhutan can be seen when the refugee crisis is resolved and they return home. In this short video by the AFP News, we can see the situation of the Lhotshampa people 35 years after the introduction of One Nation, One People policy.
Bangladesh has been hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic. The export-dependent economy, which was the fastest-growing economy in Asia, is now facing hurdles in its economic miracle. The garments industry, which is valued at almost $30 billion, is now facing a crash in demand, and massive unemployment comes as a result. According to Dr. Rubana Haq, the president of Bangladesh Garments Exporters and Manufacturers Association, the garments industry is losing almost $100 million every day. This is because US and Europe, the primary export markets for Bangladesh, are hit the hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic.
The coronavirus pandemic is threatening the livelihoods of 4.1 million factory workers, mostly women, in Bangladesh. Bangladesh's garment industry is the second largest garment and textile producer after China. This industry drives the economy. Over 1 million Bangladeshi garment workers lost their jobs. Foreign brands withdrew their orders because of the coronavirus pandemic. These actions were taken after their sales plummeted since the start of the outbreak. Cancellations have already mounted to over $3.2 billion in losses. Garment industry leaders fear the sector may not be able to stay afloat. Western companies cancelled orders by the droves. They have stated that taking these steps was necessary because they could not have predicted they would have to close stores. These companies also have large quantities of existing stock in stores and depots in transit that is paid for, which they cannot sell. Western brands believe the Bangladeshi government should provide support for its own workers. By doing so, they have shouldered responsibility to mitigate their losses and expenses. To keep costs down, mass-market fashion companies manufacture most of their goods in low-wage countries such as Bangladesh. Garment workers often work in dangerous conditions. This was the case in 2013 when the Rana Plaza garment factories collapsed, killing over 1,000 workers.
Coronavirus has undoubtedly hit the world hard, but it has hit countries like Bangladesh even harder. Countries which are still developing. Countries which are often helpless when it comes to lockdowns. It shows a strong reality to all of us. As this virus has become a means of taking a break or working at home for the rich, it has become a nightmare for the millions of daily wage earners of the subcontinent who are still deciding if it is better to die of the coronavirus or to die of hunger.
Bangladesh's finance minister warns that the country could lose 1.1% of its GDP. The population of Bangladesh is 164 million, and an estimated 2 million live in slums, below the poverty line. Many garment workers still have not been paid for their work for the last 2 months because of these circumstances.
তো 4 মাস 5 মাস ধরে বেতন পাই না একে তো করোনা পরিস্থিতি মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রীর কাছে আমাদের আকুল আবেদন আমাদের বিষয়টা বিবেচনা করুক এবং মনে করেন এখানে যারা কাউন্সিলর আছে তারা আমাদেরকে চাল ডাল কিছু দিচ্ছে না
This is a dire situation for many who live paycheck to paycheck. Many of these companies have not only cancelled future orders, they also have not collected tens of thousands of items that have already been made. Foreign buyers have given no assurance or guarantees that they will take these goods. Nor are they taking on liability for the fabric and accessories used to make these items, further isolating workers. Bangladesh's Prime Minister has announced a stimulus package of $589 million for the industry to overcome the fallout. But those who live from one paycheck to the next don't believe it will offer immediate relief. Brands will lose their profit, but workers will lose their food. The industry makes up 11% of the country's GDP and 84% of all exports. The garment and textile industry earned Bangladesh $34 billion last year. Many have returned to work even though the government has issued a lockdown. As of late April 2020, over 14.5 thousand cases of coronavirus infection were reported, with 228 deaths.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us who can give us a first-hand analysis on the condition of these workers. We are now joined by Ms. Kalpana Akhtar. She's a former child worker in Bangladesh's garment factories and is now a labor rights activist working as the executive director of Bangladesh Center for Worker Solidarity. Ms. Akhtar, welcome to the program. Very nice to have you. So, how have working conditions improved for garment workers over the years since the Rana Plaza collapse? A bit going off the issue.
So since the Rana Plaza collapse, there is a good improvement in the working condition in garment industry in Bangladesh. But that most area is safety. The building, electrical and fire safety has been improved. And the improvement can be, considered as a phenomenal. While the workers used to die in hundreds in the previous years of Rana Plaza or till Rana Plaza, last few years there was an accident, but death toll was zero. So this is the improvement has happened, but we are in a fear about the future improvement or the continuation of this improvement, as the Accord on Bangladesh Fire and Building Safety will be just transit end of this month. And if we talk about the area of other improvement like wages, like the workers' voice, those are not implemented as that much that have been expected.
All right, so what steps has the government of Bangladesh taken to alleviate the stress of garment and textile workers?
In general, government, they're supposed to monitor all the law has been enforced or not. So there is no specific, benefit from the workers to alleviate, our workers' stress in general. Okay. But if we talk about COVID, then we can talk about that. But in general, the government is supposed to monitor the law has been enforced in these factories or not. The government is supposed to take care of our safety, but many cases that government couldn't be up to the mark because there is a collusion of power. So it is so difficult to say very spatially that whether government has done anything to alleviate the workers' crisis during this time or not. In general time, I would say. Once or twice time, like when workers raise their voices to increase the wages, the Prime Minister herself has intervened and she has announced the final number or figure of the wages, though it wasn't what workers was expecting. But there is always a high, good expectation that we have that the government should take, but our expectation has never been fulfilled.
All right, before asking the next questions, I would like you to see the media views regarding this problem, and then we can continue with the show.
Hundreds of workers poured onto the streets of Bangladesh's port city of Chittagong, flouting social distancing rules to demand work and wages during the coronavirus shutdown. Companies were engaged in a race to the bottom, fighting to provide the cheapest prices and in turn continuing and endorsing inadequate and hazardous labor conditions. Garment factory workers held a demonstration on the outskirts of Bangladesh's capital Dhaka for the second day in a row, demanding payment of salaries.
Thank you for staying with us. So, how effective have the protests been, the protests by the governments and textile workers?
The protest by the workers, it has always been affected, because if workers do not ask, or if people do not ask, then there's no change happens. So every time when wages has been increased, every time when safety has been improved, every time when workers got their voices, it is because workers spoke out. It is because the workers did protest. So worker protest always been effective because the voluntary, the not manufacturers, not government do any changes in the industry. That helps workers. So it is always workers need to protest.
Okay, so what measures have factories taken to ensure the safety of these workers as they return to work during the COVID-19 pandemic?
So when the factories, in fact, the manufacturers wanted to reopen the factory during this COVID-19 crisis or pandemic, the manufacturers Manufacturers Association has developed a guideline that every factory is supposed to follow, which says that workers should be, temperature check, workers should have access to hand wash, they should provide a mask, the workers should not work in a dense working condition, there should be distance in between them, but not necessarily that every factory is following them. It is a few percentage of factories are following them, but rest of them just doing simple hand wash or thermal check. That's it. But workers just stuck in life and livelihood. They know this is unsafe, but in the same time, they need the job because no job is no money is no food. And, other hand, during this corona crisis, the manufacturers and the companies who are supposed to hold our workers back, they are just in a race to pay our workers as less as they can. The workers are just paid 60% of their wages for month of April. Many workers yet not paid their wages for month of March. And the companies, the brands, they are just canceling the order and they are asking for a discount for their product, which is shame for both of this both of this business group. And our government, in some point, the government hold workers back. The government announced close to $600 million low interest bailout money, low interest loan. So manufacturers can apply to that, and that money can be used for workers' wages, and that would be directly sending to the workers' bank account. So that just government done. But in terms of the safety, it is not adequate that the manufacturers are doing.
Yes, definitely a tough time. Thank you, Ms. Kalpana, for being with us.
Happy to be part of it.
Viewers, let's see how people have reacted on social media and cyberspace, and then we will end the show. Thank you.
Ruhul Abdin blames the society and the people for putting pressure on the workers and making them stuck between a rock and a hard place. In addition to the challenges of COVID-19 itself, Elizabeth L. Klein's tweet is more about the Bangladeshi workers not getting paid even before the pandemic. The account of the Bangladesh Manufacturers Association believes we can help the poor workers by uniting together and acting ethically and responsibly. Anton Simonowitz refers to the number of women workers who have become unemployed due to the outbreak.
All right, that was the end of this episode. And this episode is made possible by the hard work of our team, which works consistently to make sure that the show is as good as possible for you. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. And thank you for helping us improve by giving us feedback online. See you same time, same day next week. Thanks for watching.